A quick introduction. My name's Patrick. I served in the Philippines in Legazpi. That's in the Bicol region. And I was in the Philippines from 2018 to 2020. The diet in the Philippines is very, very different than America. So, quick story. My first day in the Philippines, we got there, my first day in the mission field, because there's a few days where I was in the Philippines but got fed American food. But my first day actually eating like native food, I was convinced that I was gonna die. Like, we got there and we had our neighbor was nice enough to feed us, and they have these, I can't remember what they're called, but little fish. They're like this big. They cut them and they open them and they like put salt on them and then they dry them on the roads. And then you eat all of it, head, bones, everything. You just eat it all. And I was like, how am I gonna survive? But I actually love Filipino food. I cook more Filipino food now than American food. So basically, the way it breaks down is if you're having a meal, you have rice. If you're not having rice, it's not a real meal, unless it's like noodles or pancit or something like that. So you have your rice, and then you have your ulam, and the ulam is whatever you're putting on top of the rice. It's usually like adobo or menudo or caldereta or something like that. It's essentially like a stir fry type thing. And there's lots of different ones. Like I said, adobo is like a soy sauce, salty type one. Menudo is more of a tomato. They have curry. They have sinigang, which is like a sour soup. It's super good. But all of that gets put on rice, and you're eating something like that every meal of the day. They also had like these little, and there were several of them around. The big ones where I was were like Big Mac and like Angel Burger, where they're like these little hamburger hot dog street stand things, and you could order like, they would call them hamburgers, but they're like probably more of a slider size. But you could get those, but that wasn't a meal. It's just like a snack. You could order like 4 or 5 of those, and hot dogs and hamburgers and things like that. And then for like parties, holidays, noodles were like it. So if we're having a big group, like a family's coming over or something, we'll be cooking noodles. And then like what shocked me was for Christmas in America, we'll have ham, or we'll have like a turkey or something like that. In the Philippines, they'll have spaghetti with hot dogs. So the big like fancy, like we're going all out for this meal is spaghetti with hot dogs. And the other thing too is their spaghetti is like sweet flavored rather than here it's more salty. And so I like it. I think it's really good. It's not for everybody though. There's a few other food items that were interesting, because there's a lot of food I really liked. I liked 80% of the food. There's a few things that I didn't love, and that was they would take blood and then they like let it coagulate and then like cook it on the barbecue on the streets. I never had it because I didn't want to get sick, but that was one. They would also, and I can't remember what it's called, but they would take the intestines of the pig, chop it up, and cook it in the pig's blood. I didn't care for that. I had it a few times, but it wasn't my favorite. Probably the most iconic Filipino food that you're gonna come across is balut. And basically, balut is a duck egg that's been fertilized, and so there's a fetus or like a baby duck in there. Probably a few weeks before it hatches, they boil it, and you eat it with like vinegar and stuff. I had balut probably 5 or 6 times, and honestly, it just depended on which one I got. Some of them I didn't mind, and some of them were not good at all. But they love it. It really is quite a delicacy over there. The culture in the Philippines is really awesome. And if I had to pick one word, it is courteous. It is very hospitable. Like, they are so kind and so giving, yet most of them don't have a lot, and they still give you all of it. And I felt that especially as an American, where I'd just be walking down the street and they'd be like, come on in, like, welcome to our country. And then I'd start speaking their language, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much. They were so gracious for the fact that I was in their country and speaking their language and eating their food. And it was really awesome too, because there's a few times where they'd try to serve me food or water or something like that where it might make me sick. It probably won't make them sick because they're used to it, but it would make me sick because I'm new or whatever. And they were so understanding and so respectful when I'd be like, hey, I don't feel like I can eat that. I think it'll make me sick or something. They were so respectful. They never got offended when I say that. And that was probably the best part for me is like I didn't feel like I had to put myself in a bad situation by drinking water or eating something that might like really get me sick because they were just so understanding of that as an American, I was not immune to some of those things that they probably were. When I was in the Philippines, there was a hurricane that went through my city, and it shocked me at the resilience of them. Like, they were so not phased by the fact that most of their homes had just like gotten destroyed or gone, and like the first thing they did was just like sit down and like joke and laugh, and like they were still happy people, always happy, constantly, no matter the situation. And so that was also incredible to me, is how happy and how like no matter what, they were just like, life is good. We can be happy despite having very little, most of them, especially compared to the States, and having like constant, like they get a hurricane every Christmas. Every Christmas, there's a hurricane that comes through and it wipes out their houses and their stuff. And like, they're still happy. They're still good. So it's really cool. Some super big holidays and celebrations and things happen in the Philippines. Were usually based around Christianity. Where I was, it was almost entirely Christian. A big percentage of that was Catholic, but there's lots of other denominations as well, including our church. Most of the holidays, Christmas is huge. Christmas is definitely the biggest. So they celebrate the Burr months, so September, October, November, and December. So as soon as September 1st hits, Christmas music immediately. All stores, all SMs, all LCCs, everything, Christmas music from September 1 to the end of December. So Christmas is huge. Like, they love it. And other big celebrations there is, or like Carnival. And those are dependent upon the barangays. The barangays are the different like little towns and communities and stuff. But each barangay has a Catholic church typically, and each Catholic church has a different time that they celebrate those Carnival events. And those are, based around the Catholic saints and things like that. So I was fortunate enough to like be in several communities when they would have them, and they're huge events. They usually have like similar to like county fair type rides that like swing or like swings like this and things like that, and there's food and there's parades and there's all sorts of stuff. So those little parties in the areas were super cool and fun to be around, and they really like go all out for them. Easter's another big one because again it's a Christian holiday, but they would have massive parades, all sorts of floats dedicated to Jesus or different saints, because usually it's Catholic church. But yeah, those are like definitely the biggest holidays were the Carnival things, and then Christmas and Easter. There's two things Filipinos love to do: basketball and videoke. And so those two things, absolutely. Every town has like a basketball court, and like it is, if you want to go meet people, you go to the basketball court. Everyone's there. They're playing almost every day, and they love basketball. They've got Major League Basketball there. Like, I support the Bicol Volcanoes, obviously, because I was in Bicol, but basketball is huge, and they love it. Absolutely. LeBron James, they love him. Like, they love basketball. And the other thing is videoke, and that was awesome. Videoke is like karaoke. It's the same thing, essentially. But holidays, birthdays, funerals, weddings, baptisms, like when they like get their child christened, like in the Catholic Church, any event has videoke. They bring in, like, they rent it. It's a big box, old TV, and like the words and speakers, and they're singing all night long. They love videoke, and it was new to me at first. At first, I was kind of like, "What is this?" By the end, I just loved it. It's so fun. It is a fun thing in their culture and community that they love videoke and they love basketball. Safety was a thing that varied on where you were at. I was fortunately in quite a rural area, and safety maybe wasn't as a big of an issue as it would be in maybe a bigger city like Manila or Quezon or something like that. because if you're in Quezon City or Manila or kind of that area, there's a lot of danger. There's a lot of like, don't be out at night. Make sure you have like very little money with you and things like that. Where I was, safety wasn't a huge huge problem. I don't even know of any missionary not really being safe at all. They were so nice. So safety where I was at wasn't a huge issue, and I contribute that to the people and their kindness. But in some of those bigger cities, it was a lot more dangerous, and I'm not 100% sure what they did up there to stay safe. But definitely, if you're gonna visit Manila and visit Quezon City or things like that, you definitely should be ready to know that it's not the safest area. Food safety, like I said before, it was definitely a thing we thought about often, especially as Americans, because a lot of their meat, now there was a lot of stores, and anything from a store is typically safe, but we would get a lot of our food from the palenques or the open air market type thing. And so we always made sure to buy our food in the morning, because they would have meat in the morning and then they'd leave it out all day or into the next day even. So you really try to make sure that what you're buying was like fresh, especially when it came to meat. And then same with water. You cannot drink any water that hasn't been purified. And typically all the purified water came in like blue jugs, but a lot of people would get the blue jugs and put not purified water in it. So your safest bet is to just drink Coke or Sprite. Like, don't mess around with the water unless you know it's purified, or it's like a plastic sealed water bottle. But yeah, food safety, you definitely have to be aware that if you eat street food, if you eat food that people have made for you, that there's a solid chance that it might have something that isn't healthy. But if you, like I said, the people are so nice. If you go to them and say, hey, I'm American, I'm really worried about these things, they will totally understand, and they'll be like completely respectful to that fact. And I only had food problems once, and that's because I didn't know how to speak the language and didn't tell them. But it's definitely a factor, but if you explain it to them, they are so courteous and so understanding of that it wasn't really an issue. The lifestyle there is much more humble, much more community, much smaller. Their houses are small. They're like, everything is way more dense than here. Like in the United States, if you're living in an apartment, you're like, man, that's small and it's compact. And in the Philippines, like, a big house is the size of an average apartment here. Like, a small house is literally the size, it's like a, like 10 by 20 area would house a whole family. So everything's way more dense, and they do not worry about things as much as we do. Cars where I was especially, cars weren't huge. I think I only knew 3 people with a car. But everybody had like a moped or a motorcycle or something like that. So motorcycles and things like that were standard. In the big cities like Manila, Cebu, they had cars. But for the most part, every transportation was straight motorcycles or tricycles. Tricycles were motorcycles with sidecars, and you just like traveled that way. So a lot of people if they had a motorcycle, it was their dad's or the father of the house typically, and he usually took that to work. And most mothers and children got around by either walking or tricycles or jeeps, like jeepneys and stuff, depending on where they're at. And then some cities use pajaks, which was like the same as a tricycle but a bike. And their lifestyle is very different too, because economically it's not incredibly stable. So here you can put all your money into a 401k or a Roth and like know that retirement's coming. And that's not kind of how it works there. They have to save. They have to store all their money. And so lifestyle that way is a lot more difficult. Money and jobs. Like, America has a lot more opportunity for growing and making money and advancing that way. Most people there have their own little small business, or they own a tricycle, or they sell something just because that's the best way to make money. And then a lot of them do construction or things like that. So... But they are way more focused on family. They're way more focused on like just being happy with what they have rather than going for more. Americans are always trying to like get more, be more important, be bigger, be richer. They're way more focused on just being content and being happy and being always working hard, but not necessarily needing more. Like I said, I served in Legazpi, which is in the Bicol region. So the main language of the area was Tagalog, but the dialect was Bicol. So in the MTC, I learned Tagalog. When I was in my mission, I primarily spoke that. However, there's a lot of dialect words or area words that I used that I didn't realize were not Tagalog until I got back to the States and talked to other missionaries and they didn't know what I was saying. It's actually really interesting because my first area, my trainer, he was Filipino. He didn't speak English and I didn't speak Tagalog at all, but he was actually speaking Bicol during the whole thing. So there's a lot of things that like get meshed. And the language in the Philippines is that way where they've got thousands or probably hundreds of different dialects and languages that kind of get meshed together, or they use some words from here, words from there, or whatever. So a lot of it's quite fluid as far as where different words or different phrases belong. The main language we spoke was Tagalog, and some Bicol here and there based on where we were at. The Philippines, anciently they had like different symbols, but in the last, I can't remember exactly how long, several hundred years, they converted to the alphabet similar to English. There's a few extra letters, so they have like A through Z. However, they don't have the letter, ironically, they don't have the letter F. But Filipino is spelled with an F. But their language doesn't have the letter F, but it does have the NG. NG together is one letter. They have the letter N, the letter G, and then NG. And that's like a nga sound. I can't do it great, but it's like in the back of the throat, like nga, like that. And so as far as like the alphabet, it was pretty easy to learn. It's all the same, and it's completely, like everything is spelled the way it sounds. If you don't know how to spell it, it's just exactly how it sounds, unlike, French or English or something like that. So learning things like that, it was quite simple. The difficult part was the grammar. In English, we start with noun, like I went to the store, me, as a noun, like I went, and then the verb, and then location. In the Philippines, you start with verbs, and then you go to the object, the subject, and then location. So it was difficult, the grammar, because you had to like think differently. You don't think like, oh, I went to the store. You think like you really had to think in like concepts, like, okay, we went, who, with what, where. It's just very different to get the grammar down because it's just completely different than English was, and other similar languages to English as well. Getting comfortable with the language took quite a while. I would say there's some missionaries that were super, super diligent and super good, and they were good in about 5 or 6 months. At about 8 or 9 months is when I really felt like I could say anything I needed and wanted. After about probably 3 or 4 months, I could get around communities, I could order food, I could kind of do the basics. But expressing feelings, expressing emotions, trying to explain something in a different way than I had before, that probably came around 8 or 9 months. An example of what Tagalog sounds like, I can introduce myself and then maybe say a few things about me. Hello po, ako po si Patrick, taga-Amerika ako, nakatira ako sa Pilipinas ng 2 taon, at gusto ko dito. So basically I just said, my name's Patrick, I'm from America. I think I conjugated it wrong and said I'm living here, but I lived in the Philippines for 2 years and I like it here. So it sounds really choppy. It's not as smooth as a lot of other languages. Some funny things that a lot of people said that I didn't like understand. They're like cultural, and they sound so funny when you translate them to English, but they just make sense there. Is like if you're walking, and we do this a lot. We're walking through a community or whatever, they would just yell "Bangi na" or "Gabi na," which means it's night. And so like they're just yelling at you, "Night, it's night." And like when I was new, I was like, "What are they saying?" But what they mean is, "Hey, you guys are out pretty late." Like they're just like acknowledging the fact that like we're working hard. Like, "Hey, it's late and you guys are still going." And I didn't know that, but it's super funny because like translated, you're like, "Why are they just yelling night at me?" That's so weird. And so that was kind of a funny one. There's a big mix in their language between Spanish, English, and like their own stuff. So like pogi is a Spanish word, or guapo is a Spanish word, which means like handsome. But they also use pogi. And whenever an American would say like, "Oh, pogi ako," "Oh, sobrang guapo ako," like meaning I'm really handsome, they would die. They'd think it's so funny, just because it is. Because Americans don't learn their language. Yeah, those are some of the funnier ones. I just wanted to finish by saying that I love the Philippines. I love the people. I love the communities I was in. Everybody was so respectful, and they truly are some of the nicest people I've ever met. When I came back to the States, I realized how mean we are and how abrasive we are in the way we speak and the way we talk. I love it there. I love the people, and if we could bring a part of their culture to us in America, that would be huge. I also want to say this in Tagalog before I finish. Mahal ko ang mga tao sa Pilipinas. Lahat sila ay sobrang mabait at gusto kong na magiging laking mga Pilipinong tao.